Hey everybody, hope you're all doing good. Chris McGraw from Almost Adventurous here, and I'm going to do a quick run through of what I brought with me on my trip to Iceland. So I've been to Iceland 2 times in my life, once for a video shoot for work, and then another time just with my wife for a vacation. We're fairly outdoorsy people, and so I wanted to just run through all the gear that we brought. This is going to be a little bit different if you've seen my video on what to bring to Antarctica. In Antarctica, I actually had a weight limit, and so that's why I kind of had to pare down a lot of stuff. That being said, they never once weighed any of my gear, so I guess I could have brought whatever I wanted. In Iceland, basically we drove everywhere, so we always could just throw our stuff in the car. We were moving from night to night, staying in different spots, so everything was always kind of like packed away in a duffel. Also, we got a free carry-on or an included carry-on and 2 included checked bags. So really kind of the opposite of going to Antarctica. I could bring a ton of stuff. As you can see here, I brought 4 pairs of footwear, brought a lot of jackets just because the weather can be incredibly unpredictable, especially that time of year. Later in October, it can be more wintry weather, which is what we experienced. In September, it can just be downpouring, or it could be sunny and summery. So I brought just kind of like a full range just so I would have pretty much everything. Let's start with the bottoms. These are the same bottoms that I wore to Antarctica. These are Patagonia Capilene thermal weight bottoms. Like I said in previous videos, I prefer having pants that aren't insulated. So what that means is when it's really cold on cold days, I want to wear a thermal weight base layer like this. So these are 100% polyester. They wick away sweat. I didn't bring anything that was cotton, and I didn't bring any down, but we'll get to that in a little bit. And that way it wicks away the sweat from you. The sweat evaporates, and that's how it cools you down. It's not going to stay wet. These dry incredibly quickly, which is great for a place like Iceland where it is very, very wet. It's kind of the complete opposite of Antarctica, which is the driest continent on Earth. In Iceland, you are in the middle of the Atlantic. You're by water. You're getting rained on at least one of the days, unless you're incredibly lucky. So buying or bringing along gear that will dry quickly is very important. Next is a pair of Terravia pants. These are a soft shell pant from Patagonia. They have nice zippered pockets. I wore these on the plane. They were very comfortable overnight. Have a belt built in. I like having everything zipped up when I'm traveling. That way I'm not, dropping my passport or my wallet or anything like that. Speaking of wallet, I did not bring any cash to Iceland. Nowhere did I need anything but a credit card. So just keep that in mind. You can just bring a credit card along and you should be good. If you're going to like a very, very remote area of the country, it can't hurt to have cash with you. I just wouldn't bring a lot of it. One thing about Iceland for us is that we visited a lot of waterfalls. And so we got extremely wet. Just from the mist coming off the waterfall, or if we were going behind the waterfall, that sort of thing. So I brought along a lot of doubles of everything because one night usually wasn't long enough for my gear to dry. So I brought the Terravia soft shell pant, and then I brought like a heavier duty. This is a Patagonia Simul Alpine pant. This kept me quite a bit drier than the lighter Terravia Alpine pant does. It's a little bit thicker. I wear these a lot in Colorado in the winter when I'm hiking. Keep me a little bit warmer too than the other pant. Now, there were some days where a soft shell pant is just not going to cut it, and that's where I wore a hard shell pant like the Patagonia Refugitive. This is a non-insulated pant. It was fairly chilly in Iceland, but it wasn't like Antarctica cold. I wasn't there in the winter. So I brought these pants because they don't have any insulation. I could just throw them over. They keep me a little bit warmer, mostly due to you're wearing just another layer. Another layer is going to keep you warmer, but they block the wind really well. The wind in Iceland is insane. I remember when they gave us our rental car, they told us, do not just like throw the doors open because the wind can actually blow the door and kind of bend it right at the hinges. So a ton of wind in Iceland, and that's where the hard shell pant comes in handy. So those are the bottoms. One extra thing I wanted to say about pants is that I think an option that one of my coworkers brought the first time we were there was some fleece-lined pants, like the Eddie Bauer fleece-lined Guide Pro pant. Those are insanely warm and comfortable. So if you don't want to combine, you don't want to put on 2 layers, just get yourself a nice fleece lined pant. It's kind of like, feels like pajama pants on the inside with like a soft shell on the outside. So that's another option when it comes to pants. And then when it came to base layers, there were some days where I didn't need a ton of layers. And so I did bring along, this is a Patagonia Capilene lightweight base layer. So this is just like their lightest weight t-shirt, basically. And I would wear this underneath a mid layer. That way I'm not wearing like heavy layer over heavy layer over heavy layer on days where it wasn't, necessary to have. So I brought 2 of these just because, when you're working, you're hiking, you're getting sweaty, and it's a moist area, they didn't dry very quickly, at least not overnight, every single day, depending on how rainy it was and how wet I got. So bringing 2 just made sure that I had a dry one for the next day. And then for colder days, I brought along 2 of these. This is the Patagonia Capilene Air. This is a crew neck version of it. It's a little bit loftier than the thermal weight, and it's a lot more comfortable. It keeps me a little bit warmer. It's really lightweight. So I brought the crew neck and I brought a hoodie. So this could go up over my head on those days that I was, like when I was on the glacier, I had a helmet on. So instead of wearing a beanie, I threw the hood up. The hood can go underneath the helmet, and it's just an incredibly comfortable piece of clothing. The breakdown for this, it's 51% merino wool and 49% polyester, so almost 50-50. This is not itchy to me at all, and merino wool can tend to get a little bit itchy for me. It also, because of the merino in it, is somewhat antimicrobial and anti-odor. So a lot of polyester stuff, especially if you throw it in the dryer, there's like bacteria that can get in there, and that can cause a smell when the bacteria is breaking down your body oils, essentially. So with the merino wool, it kind of gets rid of that factor. So I brought 2 of these, and these are incredibly comfortable and keep you pretty toasty as far as base layers go. And no base layer is going to keep you quite as toasty as a mid layer is, just because part of what keeps you warm is trapping the air in between your body and the shell that you're wearing and warming that air up. And that's why this, which is a little bit loftier than, say, the thermal weight, keeps you a little bit warmer, but still doesn't have the trapped air like a mid layer would. Speaking of mid layers, here we are. This is an R1 Air Crew. I like hoods in general, but on this trip, it wasn't going to be like super, super, super cold, at least I thought. And so I didn't want to be wearing a ton of hoods and dealing with a ton of hoods. So I just went with the Crew. I am more of a fan when it comes to crew necks than I am like a quarter zip, even like the one that I'm wearing now, especially if it's up against my body. Sometimes I would wear this as a base layer without anything underneath, or with the light base layer. And having a zipper just kind of bugs me. Metal zippers can get cold, and this doesn't, you don't have to deal with that with this. So it's got this zigzag pattern. It's incredibly breathable, which is nice, and it kept me pretty toasty underneath. A shell, another mid layer when it was slightly colder. This is the Nano Air Light Hoodie. I wish they made this still. Such a great piece of clothing, super light. It's only got the one pocket, incredibly comfortable. And with the 40-gram insulation, it kept me very warm. It is synthetic insulation. And the reason actually all this stuff is synthetic insulation, and the reason that I brought that over down is because of how wet Iceland can get. So once down gets wet, it stops keeping you warm. And synthetic insulation is not that way. So this could get wet, this could get rained on, it would still keep me relatively warm. And then finally for mid layers, this is actually something I bought in Iceland. The first time I went there, I didn't buy a sweater, and I kind of regretted it, even though they are expensive. I think this one cost me around $200, but they're hand knit with Icelandic wool. Insanely warm. This keeps me crazy warm. In the winter in Colorado, I can put this on and just most of the time it's too much. So in really cold places, I throw this on and it just keeps me so toasty. And I do really love it. I love the pattern and it's a great souvenir. So if you're in Reykjavik, you can stop at, here, let me read off the brand. It's the Hand Knitting Association of Iceland. You can try on a bunch of different ones and yeah, great sweater. So that's pretty much it for mid layers. On top of that is going to be my shell. And the jacket I brought with me is a pretty bomb-proof 3-layer Gore-Tex shell called the Patagonia Trio Lay. And it's got a boxy fit, which is nice for layering underneath. It kept me dry, and we had a couple days where it was downpouring. It poured a lot when we were hiking the glacier. So it was nice to have this and not be wet. Yeah, it's a great jacket. Can be fairly expensive. Actually, all this stuff can be fairly expensive if you're buying it new. Luckily for me, I found a lot of this online secondhand. You can go to sites like Poshmark or eBay or Mercari or even Facebook Marketplace and pick up a lot of this stuff for pennies on the dollar. So that's how I can afford all this stuff. I don't pay MSRP for it. A jacket like this is like an MSRP of $400 or $500. I paid $100 for it. Jacket like this too, that was originally like $300 or $400, and I paid $60 for it. So if you find deals like that, if you know what you're looking for, you can find some good deals and save quite a bit of money. This is an ultra lightweight shell. This is a Patagonia Houdini shell. It's not going to keep you super dry, but it is a great windbreaker. Like I mentioned, super windy in Iceland. The reason that I brought this along is because it packs down into this pocket, into about the size my hand is right now. And so I just kept this in my backpack at all times. So that way I knew, say I left the big burly shell in the car because I didn't think it was going to rain or anything, and it started to, I could take this out of my backpack and kind of save myself a little bit there. A few of the days got very cold when we were in Iceland towards the end of our trip, and that wind can cut through a lot and just kind of chill you, especially when the humidity is high. I know I get pretty chilly when the humidity is high and the temperatures drop. So I brought a synthetic winter jacket. This is the Patagonia DAS. It's got a nice oversized fit. This is an older model. This is the one that I said I got off of Facebook Marketplace for $60. This is great because you can throw this on over everything. It's got a nice generous fit. I have fit it underneath the Patagonia Trio Lay, and I've also fit it over. So you kind of have a few options there. There are a ton of pockets, hand warmer pockets, some stash pockets. You can throw a water bottle or anything inside if you want to keep that warm and not frozen. This is one of my favorite jackets for winter here in Colorado, for visiting family in Michigan, going up to Canada, going to Iceland, and pretty much everywhere. I love this jacket, love the color, love everything about it. So if you find one of these, I can't say enough good things about it. And then finally, on a few days in Reykjavik, I was just, we were just doing normal touristy things. We weren't doing any hiking or anything like that, but we were walking around the city quite a bit, and it could get fairly chilly. So I did bring kind of an all-in-one parka. This is the Fjallraven U-Pick parka. Let me see if I can get the zipper undone here. Let's take it off the hanger. I love this color. There we go. And it's just a nice synthetic heavyweight parka. It's long, so it kind of goes down almost to my knees. It's got a nice hood with some faux fur on it. You could throw this on and stay relatively warm. It's not a 0-degree parka. There were some days where I found myself even cold in this, and I had to throw on, a nano air mid layer just to stay warm. So it's not necessarily a do everything parka like say Canada Goose or something like that. But it is fairly heavy. It's got a ton of pockets, so many pockets that sometimes I would like lose my keys in like what pocket. And it's just kind of nice to have by the door at the hotel. You're running out to the grocery store or to dinner or something, just throw this on over that Icelandic sweater and you should stay relatively warm. All right. Accessories. So I brought along some sunglasses. Sunglasses I bring everywhere. It's just nice to have, especially on the glacier. It was really nice because the sun coming down, if it was a sunny day, that day was pretty cloudy, but the sun coming down off of ice can be really, really bright. As far as gloves go, I have these Gore-Tex Infinium glove liners from the North Face. I use these all the time. I use them running. They're relatively, they do a good job blocking the wind, better than you'd think for a glove this small. They also do a good job at keeping my hands dry. So I would put these on and then put on my other set of gloves. And when I needed to take off the other bigger set of gloves to, snap some photos or do anything where I needed more dexterity out of my hands, these still kept my hands pretty warm. Here are some of the other gloves. These are actually my wife's because mine I had for about 15 years. I put my hand in them the other day and it just tore right open. So those had to go to the great outdoor gear bin in the sky, unfortunately. But we both had the same kind of gloves. Mine were Gore-Tex North Face gloves. I like to size up. That way I can fit my hands inside pretty easily. If your hands are too tight in gloves, at least in my experience, I've found that they just don't stay warm because there's not enough air in the gloves then to trap any heat from your body and keep your hands warm. But waterproof exterior gloves are a must in Iceland. And these ones are nice. They have like some Velcro at the wrist, so that way they're not falling off a whole lot. On days when I wasn't wearing a hood, I wore this beanie. I wore this beanie probably most days, just because it was chilly enough for a beanie most days. This is the Patagonia Slope Style beanie, and it is hands down my favorite winter hat I have ever worn. It's small, yet it keeps my head pretty toasty. And then when it comes to footwear, wool socks are also a must. I brought a few pairs of these to make sure that they were dry the next day and they don't smell by the end of it. I wouldn't be, sticking my face up to them and testing that theory too much, but they didn't smell at least too much by the end of the trip. On some of the drier days, when I was only wearing trail runners, I was doing like bigger hikes mileage-wise, I wore these in Gigi socks. These are lightweight, and they are toe socks. And for me, they just prevent blisters really nicely. Your mileage may vary there. I have a friend who bought these and they caused him to have blisters. So a lot like shoes, I find that socks really vary from person to person, though the material of the sock is very important. So either wool or some kind of synthetic. So don't go with any cotton socks. And let's finally talk about some footwear. So I brought 2 pairs of boots, 2 pairs of trail running shoes with me to Iceland. These are the Scarpa Sharmax GTX, Sharmax Pro GTX, I should say. These are what I used on the glacier and hiking some of the days. So they're Gore-Tex, they're waterproof, they accept crampons, which is necessary for when you're on a glacier, and all around just a really solid boot. Bought these off of brand new on Poshmark for $100. So that was a really good deal on my end. When it was just, on the plane or some other walking around hiking, I wore these. These are really, really warm. These are Zamberlan Vias GT boots. These are also Gore-Tex, so they're waterproof. Just a really comfortable boot. Find a really comfortable hiking boot and hold on to it. And these are expensive. These are like $300 or $350. But I have had these for over a decade and I use them all the time. So my per use price is pretty low. And yeah, I haven't had any issues. The company's been really good. The first pair that I got had an issue with the sole crumbling apart. It was actually like a Vibram issue. I sent them photos and they mailed me a brand new pair and then told me to mail in my other one, so that way I wasn't going without boots. So yeah, just a really great company, really great boot. And then kind of a more aggressive trail runner. These are Salomon Speedcross 5s. They got these big lugs on the bottom. So these are great for hiking. I have a couple of these in my normal shoe size, which is a 9. And then I do have one pair in a 9.5. And that way I can wear the bigger wool socks underneath. These are fairly like a narrow fit. I have a narrower foot. And so with the narrow fit, if I want to wear a thicker sock, I have to size up. But these are some of my favorite trail runners. And then as far as a comfortable trail runner that isn't as aggressive, these are the Hoka Speed Goat 5s. I have these in regular and a Gore-Tex version. I brought the regular because I didn't have the Gore-Tex at the time. I don't know if I would have brought the Gore-Tex even if I had them at the time. The lugs are not quite as aggressive as the ones from the Salomons, and there's a lot more cushion. So on bigger days, I've run like a half marathon in these. These are just my favorite running shoe overall. So if you just want like a comfortable walking around shoe, I would say go with this, even though they are specifically trail runners. It's nice to have the option to wear them out and about on a trail and also like kind of around town. Though the more you wear them on cement, the more you will wear down the bottom just a little bit quicker. So just keep that in mind. So that is everything that I brought with me to Iceland. If you're doing the camper van route, I would definitely bring a synthetic bag. As hard as I tried, my sleeping bag got wet the first time I was there. The second time I stayed in hotels the whole time with my wife. So a synthetic bag is going to do a little bit better than cotton there. They offer bags and blankets and that sort of thing with a lot of the camper van rentals, so you can see depending on which site you go. And ultimately just have a great time, man. Iceland is a phenomenal place. Do as much as you can. I know the Golden Circle right outside of Reykjavik is insanely popular. In my opinion, if you can get out and explore more of the country, that's where you're going to make the most memories, because it could be just you and whoever you're with in the middle of nowhere in this incredibly picturesque place that is unlike anywhere I've ever been before or since. So take a ton of photos, make a lot of memories, and hopefully you have a great time in Iceland. If you like this video, just hit like down below. I'm going to be making a ton of these kinds of videos about what gear I bring where. If you know somebody going on a trip, send them the link, share it with them, hit subscribe. That would be awesome. And I'll catch you on the next one.